Legends don't always age gracefully, especially when they start throwing stones from glass houses. Magic Johnson just found out what happens when you critique the wrong young star, and Ja Morant's response has left the basketball world picking sides in a battle nobody saw coming. This isn't your typical old school versus new school debate. This is personal, brutal, and it's exposing everything wrong with how some retired legends view today's game. Magic, the architect of Showtime Lakers basketball, decided he needed to educate today's players about intensity and rivalries. Bad move. Terrible timing. Because Ja Morant isn't just any modern player. He's the one guy in the league who lives and breathes the confrontation Magic claims is missing. It's disappointing now to see them shaking hands, Magic complained on Byron Scott's podcast, painting today's NBA as soft and manufactured. The irony. He was talking about a generation that includes a player who's been fined $75,000 for being too intense, too confrontational, too much of exactly what Magic says the league needs. Morant's response was immediate and devastating. You talk about watching rivalries. When I'm out there giving everything for this city, who says you cared? Don't lecture me about what works in the league from your seat. Those words didn't just challenge Magic's critique, they challenged his relevance. Then one sentence, Ja Morant transformed himself from the subject of criticism into the voice of his generation, speaking for every young player tired of being measured against a past they never experienced. What happened next split the basketball community down the middle and forced everyone to ask uncomfortable questions about respect, legacy, and whether the greatest players of all time have the right to diminish the achievements of today's stars just because they play the game differently. Magic's misguided attack. The conversation on Byron Scott's Fast Break podcast was supposed to be a casual stroll through basketball history. Magic Johnson, the perpetual optimist and ambassador of the game, was there to discuss his business ventures and reminisce about the Lakers' championship runs. But somewhere between talking about building winning cultures and his executive experience, Magic decided to get philosophical about the current state of the NBA. The game has changed, and not all for the better, Magic said, settling into what sounded like a prepared speech. When we played, you had real rivalries, real competition, real dislike that drove ratings and made people care. Byron, sensing his old teammate was building toward something significant, encouraged him to elaborate. That's when Magic made the mistake that would haunt him for weeks. It's disappointing now to see them shaking hands before games, being buddy-buddy on social media, then trying to manufacture drama for highlights. The intensity we had with Boston, with Detroit, with Chicago, that was organic. That was real hatred that translated to incredible basketball. He wasn't done. Magic continued his critique with the confidence of someone who clearly hadn't been paying attention to the current landscape. These young players today don't understand that conflict creates compelling television. They're all friends, all collaborative, all politically correct. Where's the fire? Where's the anger that makes you watch every possession like your life depends on it? The podcast hosts tried to steer the conversation towards specific examples, but Magic had found his groove and wasn't backing down. Look at the best players today. They're talented, don't get me wrong, but they don't carry themselves like killers. They don't have that edge that separates good players from legends. Do you think Magic has a point about modern NBA rivalries being too manufactured, or is he just out of touch with how today's game works? What made Magic's comments particularly tone-deaf was their timing. He was essentially arguing that the league lacked intensity and authentic villains, while completely ignoring players like Ja Morant, who had literally been fined for being too intense, too confrontational, and too willing to embrace the villain role Magic claimed was extinct. The interview continued for another hour, but those 15 minutes of generational criticism were enough to create a firestorm that would consume NBA social media for weeks. Magic had essentially challenged every young player in the league to prove their worth against his era's standard, never considering that one of them might actually respond. Ja's nuclear response. Ja Morant was in his car driving home from a workout at the Grizzlies' practice facility when his phone started buzzing with notifications. Text messages, social media mentions, calls from teammates. Everyone wanted to know if he'd heard what Magic Johnson said about his generation. He pulled over and listened to the podcast clips right there on the side of the road. With each passing minute, his expression changed from confusion to disbelief to something much more dangerous. Determination. Morant didn't tweet about it. He didn't post an Instagram story. Instead, he called into the morning show on 92.9 FM in Memphis, the same station where he'd built relationships during his rise to stardom. The hosts knew immediately they were about to get something special. Ja, we know you heard Magic's comments about young players lacking intensity, host Eric Barnes said. What's your response? My response? Morant's voice was calm, but there was steel underneath. Magic Johnson, talking about intensity and rivalries while I'm out here getting fined $75,000 for having too much intensity. Make it make sense. The studio went quiet. This wasn't the diplomatic response they expected. You talk about watching rivalries. When I'm out there giving everything for this city, who says you cared? Morant continued, his voice gaining strength. Don't lecture me about what works in the league from your seat in the luxury box. But Ja was just getting started. Magic wants real villains, real intensity. I've been that guy since day one. I've been the player other teams circle on their calendar. I've been the guy who gets death threats for celebrating too hard. But somehow that's not enough intensity for Magic? Was Ja's response justified given Magic's comments, or did he cross a line by challenging a legend so directly? The host tried to give Morant a chance to walk back his comments, asking if he respected Magic's accomplishments. That's when Ja delivered the line that would define this entire controversy. I respect what Magic did as a player, but being great 30 years ago doesn't give you the right to disrespect what we're building today. He talks about manufactured drama. What's more manufactured than a retired player on a podcast trying to stay relevant by tearing down the current generation? The interview lasted 20 more minutes, but those sound bites were already racing across social media, setting up a generational battle that would divide the basketball world. The basketball world chooses sides. Within hours of Ja Morant's radio interview, the NBA community was engulfed in the biggest generational debate in years. Social media became a battlefield where current players, retired legends, analysts, and fans picked sides in what felt like a referendum on the direction of basketball culture. Current players rallied behind Morant almost immediately. Damian Lillard tweeted, "Young Bull said what needed to be said. Respect is earned every day, not inherited from the past." Jason Tatum was more direct. "We play with plenty of intensity. Maybe some folks just aren't paying attention." But the response that really caught attention came from LeBron James, who found himself in the unique position of bridging both eras. Much respect to Magic always, but this generation brings their own fire. Different doesn't mean less. The retired player's response was more complicated. Some, like Charles Barkley, supported Magic's general sentiment while criticizing his delivery. Magic's not wrong about the game being different, but calling out specific generations publicly ain't it. Others went harder. Isaiah Thomas posted a lengthy Instagram caption defending Magic. "When legends speak, young players should listen, not talk back." There's a respect factor missing from today's game. Should current players be expected to show automatic respect to legends, or do they have the right to defend themselves when criticized publicly? The media coverage was relentless. ESPN dedicated multiple segments to the controversy. Stephen A. Smith defended Ja. "This young man has shown more intensity and competitive fire than most players in the league. Magic's comments were unfair and uninformed." Skip Bayless, predictably, took the opposite stance. Ja Morant is proving Magic's point. Instead of letting his play do the talking, he's creating drama and controversy. That's manufactured intensity, not authentic competition. The most interesting reactions came from coaches around the league. Several, speaking on background, admitted they were torn between respecting Magic's legacy and supporting their current players. "It's a difficult position," one Western Conference coach said anonymously. "These young guys play hard and compete fiercely, but they also deserve to be respected by the legends who came before them." The debate was no longer just about basketball, it had become about generational respect, legacy, and the evolution of sports culture. The deeper issues at stake. The Magic Jar controversy exposed deeper fractures in how the basketball community views competition, authenticity, and the relationship between past and present greatness. What started as criticism about handshakes and social media friendships had evolved into a fundamental disagreement about what makes basketball compelling. Magic's critique reflected a common sentiment among older fans and retired players, that modern basketball lacks the organic hatred and genuine dislike that fueled the greatest rivalries in NBA history. The Lakers-Celtics battles of the 1980s, the Pistons' physical dominance, Jordan's ruthless competitiveness, these moments are held up as the gold standard for authentic basketball intensity. But Morant's response highlighted a different reality. Today's players face scrutiny and criticism at levels previous generations never experienced. Social media amplifies every gesture, every celebration, every moment of emotion. Players like Morant are fined tens of thousands of dollars for displays of intensity that would have been celebrated in Magic's era. The controversy also revealed generational differences in how respect is earned and maintained. Magic and his contemporaries operated in a world where veteran status and past accomplishments created an automatic hierarchy. Today's players, raised in a more egalitarian social media culture, believe respect must be continuously earned rather than inherited. Do you think today's NBA players face more or less pressure than previous generations? How has social media changed the game beyond just basketball? Basketball analysts began examining whether Magic's criticism held statistical weight. The data showed that technical fouls, ejections, and on-court confrontations weren't significantly lower than in previous decades. What had changed was the context and consequences of those moments. The business side of basketball also played a role in the debate. The modern NBA is a global entertainment product worth billions of dollars. Player behavior is carefully managed not just by teams, but by sponsors, agents, and league officials who prioritize marketability alongside competition. Some veterans found middle ground in the controversy. Tim Duncan, known for his quiet leadership style, offered perspective. Every era brings different challenges and different ways of competing. Intensity isn't just about confrontation, it's about preparation, execution, and caring about winning. The debate had evolved beyond Magic versus Ja into a broader conversation about authenticity, respect, and the future of basketball culture. The lasting impact on NBA culture. 2 months after the initial exchange, the reverberations from the Magic-Ja controversy were still reshaping conversations about leadership, respect, and authenticity throughout the NBA ecosystem. Ja Morant had emerged from the confrontation with his reputation not only intact but enhanced. His willingness to challenge a legend while maintaining respect for Magic's accomplishments resonated with fans who appreciated authenticity over diplomacy. Merchandise sales spiked, social media following increased, and most importantly, his peers viewed him as someone willing to stand up for their generation. The Memphis Grizzlies organization initially worried about potential fallout from their star player challenging an NBA icon. Instead, they found themselves with a more engaged fan base and increased media attention. Morant's stance had inadvertently strengthened his connection to a city that values grit and authenticity above political correctness. Magic Johnson, meanwhile, faced a more complex aftermath. While many fans supported his right to critique the modern game, others questioned whether his comments reflected actual knowledge of today's players or nostalgic bias for his own era. His subsequent appearances showed a more measured approach to discussing current players. The controversy changed how retired players approached criticism of active players. Several legends, including Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Bill Russell, published thoughtful pieces about supporting current generations rather than diminishing their achievements. The message was clear: mentorship required more nuance than public criticism. Looking back, do you think this controversy helped or hurt the relationship between NBA generations? Should legends be more supportive of current players? Current players noted a shift in how they were covered by media. Interviews included more questions about handling criticism from former players and maintaining respect for basketball history while carving out their own legacies. The NBA itself benefited from the attention generated by the controversy. Discussions about intensity, rivalries, and competition drove engagement across all platforms. The league had found a way to generate authentic drama without manufactured storylines. Perhaps most significantly, the incident established a new precedent for how current players could respond to criticism from legends. Respectful but firm pushback was now acceptable, even expected, when faced with unfair or uninformed criticism. The basketball world had learned that respect flows both ways, regardless of era or accomplishment. Sometimes the most important conversations happen when someone refuses to stay quiet. Ja Morant's response to Magic Johnson wasn't just about defending himself. It was about establishing boundaries for how legends can critique current players. Magic learned that past greatness doesn't provide immunity from accountability when making public criticisms. His comments, while well-intentioned, reflected assumptions about modern players that didn't match reality. Morant proved that today's players won't accept diminishment of their achievements just because they play in a different era with different rules and expectations. His generation brings intensity and competition in ways that might not always match historical templates, but are no less authentic. The real winner in this exchange was basketball itself. The controversy generated passionate discussions about competition, respect, and evolution that reminded everyone why they love the game. Both legends and current players now understand the conversation works better as dialogue than monologue.